Good morning, everyone. Today is Monday, February 24th, 2020, and here is today's Monday Morning Minute. For today, we'll start by recapping last week's readings, talking about classroom rules and procedures. We'll then look at this week's readings, which have to do more specifically with managing paperwork and other issues of classroom organization. And then I'll preview two upcoming assignments. We have our fifth critical response due this week. And I also want to talk about our second summative assessment, which is the Classroom Culture Toolkit, which is coming up due at the end of March, March 29th. So thinking back to last week, talking about rules and procedures, Doug, thank you so much for your candor as always. And thank you also for this particular approach that you shared with us when it comes to rules in your particular classroom. So Doug wrote, students are more interested in broad topics like respecting each other and school property and kind of letting it all play out from there. I also let them have some say in what they believe is fair and reasonable. I have a lot of safety topics in my curriculum, so it helps to kind of get a conversation started and keep it moving throughout the semester. The pinnacle of this plan is when I catch students correcting their classmates. It's that moment when I know somebody is listening. And Doug, I think this is such a cool example of ensuring that the rules that you set, even if it's rather informal, are important ones to your students. You can tell in those moments when they're correcting each other that these rules are meaningful, and they're likely meaningful because you developed them in conversation with your students, right? It wasn't something that you decided and imposed upon your students. So thank you again for sharing that cool example. And Caitlin wrote, in my room, for the most part, my kids feel comfortable and they learn in the environment they are given, but I feel as if it just doesn't settle with me. I feel that my room is missing something or isn't arranged in the right way. I do think it is harder in my classroom due to the different items that I am required to have in my room for my students. They are not all easy to move or work around, so I just have to find the best way to incorporate everything for the best interest of my kiddos and myself. And Caitlin, I think you bring up a really interesting point here, and also some of the difficulty in terms of finding a classroom arrangement that ensures that all of the equipment, all of the materials that you need for your particular students are easily accessible, but also one that works for you and works for your students. And I don't have all of the answers. I gave you some suggestions when I followed up on your post, but I'm hoping that sort of putting this out there to the whole group, we can perhaps put our brains together and think about strategies that Caitlin might be able to use given the uniqueness of her classroom setting and also what she's hoping to accomplish. Thank you all so much, as always, for participating so thoughtfully in last week's Critical Response Forum. For this week, we're talking about paperwork. We're talking about, again, sort of in the vein of organization. I have two just sort of really brief articles, and I'm hoping, in fact, that through this week's critical response, we can actually have a broader conversation because as folks who have a lot of years of teaching between us, I think that we can hopefully, that is, help each other discover some new tools, perhaps. So the first assigned reading is from Kelly 2019, and it's just talking about the importance of organization for teachers. Again, a very, very brief article, one that I wish would have gone into just a bit more depth. I'm still trying to search for a good reading, so if any of you have suggestions, please send them my way. But this is just, again, a brief overview. And Kelly notes that, relevant to our purposes, talking about classroom management, classroom disruptions often could be prevented, could have been stopped if there were effective organizational systems in place. Kelly gives a positive example, like a way to minimize disruptions, and that includes having set routines in your class. So if you have a warm-up or a do now on the board, when students come in, they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And that gives them sort of an instructional frame of mind the minute that they enter your class. And then Preble 2012, this is just, again, very brief, and this author just goes through 12 ways to manage teacher paperwork. Some of these, I'm sure, are things that you're already doing. Some of these are things maybe that you don't think would work for your particular classroom, but I'm hopeful that maybe there's one or two ideas here that might be implementable for you given your context. And again, I'll talk in just a second about our critical response number 5 and how we're going to kind of add on to the suggestions outlined by these authors. But first, let's talk about our upcoming assignment, not due for another month or so. It's at the end of our second unit. It's called the Classroom Culture Toolkit. I'm going to go ahead and pull up that assignment description right now. Okay, so here this is, and just a reminder, this can be found if you go to the assignments folder in the sort of left-hand menu within our Blackboard course and just click on the folder for the Classroom Management Toolkit. So at this point, this toolkit, the idea behind it is to come up with an issue that has been raised at some point so far in this class, having to do with classroom management, that you yourself would like to improve upon and or would like to learn more information about. So here are some sample topics, some sample issues within classroom management that you might be interested in. So how can I ensure students of all cultural and linguistic backgrounds are welcomed in my class? How can I establish positive relationships with parents and guardians? How can I motivate students to want to participate in my class? How can I set a positive tone? And what are some ways to get my classroom culture back on track after a breach, maybe after an incident? Again, these are just suggestions, so I'm hoping that there's one particular issue that you're like, you know what, I want to know more about this, or this is an area that I myself would like to improve upon. I think it'll be a more meaningful assignment that way. So you identify that area of growth. The toolkit itself is comprised of 8 to 10 resources that, if utilized, would help a teacher or instructor improve in that area. So when I say resources, these can be internet apps that maybe you can use in your classroom, tips and strategies, kind of like the Edutopia articles that we've read, maybe organizational techniques or trackers, maybe templates for letters, for instance, if you're thinking about how to improve your relationship with parents and guardians. Basically, again, any resources that would be helpful in exploring the question or the theme that you've already identified. And again, these should be sort of useful things that a teacher could just kind of take and put into their class tomorrow if they wanted to. And then I've listed this as number 3, but perhaps confusingly, it will be the first part of your toolkit, and that's just an executive summary. So 300 to 500 words, not very long. Just provide an overview of your topic and a summary of what you've learned from your research. Within this summary, please do incorporate and synthesize relevant course content. So I do want to ensure that you're taking some of the concrete ideas and suggestions and perspectives of the authors that we've read, and their voices are in here somewhere. And the reason I've listed it third is just because in my mind, logically, these are the steps to follow, right? Start off with your idea, come up with some resources, and then write a summary that introduces these resources and also discusses relevant literature. So that's the assignment in a nutshell. Again, I'm hoping that talking about it now will give you some lead time in terms of coming up with that topic and reaching out if you have any sort of question. All right. So finally, for next time, again, we have our critical response due this week. So your initial post will be due Thursday, February 27th. Follow-up posts due on Sunday, March 1st. And here's the optional prompt, and I'm hopeful that this will be something that everyone will want to participate in, again, because the articles this week are just a little skimpy. There's not a whole lot to them. So I'm wondering about some of your most effective organizational strategies in the classroom. How do you go about managing paperwork and all of the other sort of organizational tasks that come with being a teacher? What are some cool strategies that maybe you can share with us? I'm also curious about the impacts of these strategies on your class. What are the benefits of this particular approach that you've chosen? And then I would love to know from you all about any challenges that you've experienced related to classroom organization. Where do you still struggle? And perhaps that can be a point at which the others of us in this course can jump in with our comments and perhaps add some feedback, give you some ideas, etc. So again, that's still optional, but I'm interested to hear your perspectives. So thank you all so much for listening, and I'll see you soon.